Good
Hi, Mark. How are you?
evening, Dijon. Good, and you?
Hi. Yeah, I'm fine. Well, I thought we'd do this little presentation today because following on from a recent conversation we have regarding the continuous insurance requirement that seems to be hitting a lot of people, and I'm being asked, what do we do about it? Because it seems that a lot of people are being prosecuted for not having insurance whilst their vehicle is actually parked on private land. Now, in no way do we support people driving around on the road with no insurance. For me, that's a no-no. But as we've seen with insurance prices going up, people are shopping around. They may have a car MOT'd, it's got tax, but they just don't know what to do, or it's been passed over to a new keeper. Next minute, they get this letter advisory from the DVLA with a pending £100. So, and I've been asked by a number of people, what do I do? Because when they've looked at the law or the legislation, they can't find anything. It's very, very obscure. And before they know it, they end up with these documentation and asking to plead guilty or whatever. And before too long, they're having to part with £100 or probably more if they end up in court. So I thought it would be a really good idea that, having discussed it with you, Mark, that we could actually go through legislation and let's really find. Before we do that, just for everybody's benefit, I'm just going to quickly show on the screen what we're actually talking about. And it's actually, when you put in a search, you get up things like this. 2011 in the UK, the continuous insurance enforcement is a law that came into force in 2011. Blah, 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 blah. Anybody can find this.
But just
and then you go.
it's worth reading
So,
the whole of that bit.
okay, let's go back.
So it
Okay. Yeah, it mandates that every vehicle owner and the rider maintains insurance coverage unless their vehicle is officially declared off the road with a statutory off-road notification. We all know this is a SORN. The law was introduced to help reduce the problem of uninsured drivers in the UK and to protect honest drivers. Well, absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if you go on to various websites, there's quite a lot of it. Continuous insurance enforcement explained, it goes on, and basically saying this is the new legislation. And there's loads of it on the internet. Again, if you just type it in, it will, all the information saying that you must have it insured, whether it's on the road or off, it appears. If you go into the Road Traffic Act 1988, they will then be prosecuting you under this section, and it's a 144A, okay, and it will be under here, the notification, okay. So really, we've discussed this, Mark, so I'm going to pass it over to you to help put some clarity on this and hopefully shed some light on what we can do to defend ourselves against these erroneous charges that now seem to be coming from the DVLA.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, so let me share my screen. Now, what stuck out there was SORN. Okay, so this is the legislation website, Road Traffic Act. So if we quickly just do Control Find and look for SORN, okay, it doesn't appear anywhere in the section of compulsory insurance. Let's just make sure. Okay, neither big or statutory off. Okay, so it's got no in here anything to do with SORN or statutory off-road, whatever they were quoting.
Notice, yeah.
Okay. So if we just show people what it looks like, this paper that they're going to get, where they're trying to make more money. And this here shows you they're getting seriously desperate. Okay. So what they're saying is, okay, did not meet the insurance requirements contrary to section 144A1 of the Road Traffic Act. So what we need to do is go to the Road Traffic Act and see what section 1411 says. So what we'll do is start with the current Road Traffic Act 1998. Okay. And here, as we scroll down, it's got section 144A, offense of keeping a vehicle which does not meet insurance requirements. So this all is within the part of the act which is called compulsory insurance. So it starts off with, in essence, introduction, users of motor vehicles to be insured. Okay, so the operative word being a user. Okay, so a person must not use a motor vehicle on a road or other public place unless there is enforced in relation to the use of the vehicle that a person such as use the vehicle by that person such a policy of insurance as complies with the requirements of this part of the act. So if you're using a car on the road, it's got to comply with this part of the act. You cannot cause or permit another person to use a road in a public place unless there's insurance, which complies with this. If you are in contravention of subsection 1 above, you're guilty of an offense. You shall not be charged with using a motor vehicle in contravention of this section, and shall not be convicted if you prove the vehicle does not belong to you and was not in your possession and not under a contract for hire, that it was used for course of employment, and that you did not have any reason to believe that you were uninsured. Okay, so what's interesting here, it's talking about the use and makes clear the intention of insurance. Okay, there's a risk that you could have an accident and you can't compensate the person for any harm you might do, where an accident may be your fault. So that's the rationality behind what's going on here. So that there, though, is playing with words. If you use, okay. So section 144 is a list of exceptions, and I'll come back to this because there's some very interesting things here which people need to be aware of. Okay, but this is the offense that they're charging you with: keeping a vehicle which does not meet insurance requirements. Okay, so this is now coming into the registered keeper. So what they're saying is, if you keep a vehicle, okay, which is registered under the excise things, which basically, if you've got vehicle tags, does not meet the insurance requirements, you're guilty of an offense. So what it says is, for the purpose of the section, a vehicle meets insurance requirements if covered by a policy, complies with the requirements of this part, and either of the following conditions are satisfied. The first is that the policy identifies the vehicle by its registration mark as a vehicle covered by the policy. And the second condition is that you may have another insurance which relates to any vehicle. The vehicle is owned by that person. So what it's doing here is they're saying keeping a vehicle. Okay. So if you've got, if it's registered, i.e. if it's tagged, they claiming it must meet the insurance requirements. So that there's totally irrational. If we go back to section 143, it's why do we want insurance? To cover potential risks whilst we're driving in a public area. So if it's not in a public area, it's totally irrational. What's wrong with having an MOT? And like you pointed out earlier, you can get day insurance rather than full insurance. So going back to the thing, so that there's what their claim is. You didn't have insurance as the registered keeper. Okay, there they are. Registered keeper is what they're playing on. So it's not an issue of the legitimate aim of insurance. This is basically just trying to screw you over. That's what it's all about. So basically they give you three options. I wish to plead guilty in writing, plead guilty in court. I wish to plead not guilty with an asterisk. Okay, if you plead not guilty, you must complete the next thing. Okay, if your name or address is wrong, okay, so up here, if those details are wrong, then you can correct it. And then if you've got any mitigating circumstances, so here basically everything comes to reasonable excuse. And what we'll be doing is looking further down here, okay, and you'll see what the reasonable excuse is. If you're found guilty, the agency will apply costs of at least £100. So this is threats and intimidation. And so what they're saying is you're an uninsured keeper of a motor vehicle, and they leave you the option, I'm pleading not guilty because, okay? You don't actually need to enter a plea because in certain circumstances, there is actually no case to answer. So in accordance with the court's obligations under section 63 of the Sentencing Act 2020, as there is no victim, there is no crime, hence there can be no fine, as the evidence fails to show actual harm, intended harm, or reasonably foreseeable harm. And as the vehicle was not used on public roads or on public spaces under section 143 of the RTA, no insurance is required. And this is further affirmed under section 144B5 of the Road Traffic Act 1998, where the fourth condition is met, both which exempt me as a registered keeper from your claim. Accordingly, there is no case to answer. And we'll be going through this so that you can see what you're saying. Then the prosecution has sent you a witness statement. If you object to the statement being used, everything's cross-examinable. So if you don't object, basically, it's unlikely that the person making the claim will be there and the court will rely on the witness statement. Okay, so then this is what's called a single justice notice procedure. So basically, if you've admitted, okay, you've pled guilty, that single justice, okay, i.e. one magistrate, will deal with the paperwork and sentence and send out the fine because you've consented to that through your guilty plea. If you're not guilty, if you plead not guilty, that single justice will send it to a court for a hearing. Okay, so then you've got to respond to this within 21 days. Otherwise, you've got to give them a good reason. Why?
It's an interesting point on these documents, Mark, is that the date starts from the date of issuing of the documents. And if you go to the front of the document, there is no date, but it will be hidden down in, see, there will be no date on here. Okay. But if you go down, they deem the date as from the issuance. Here it is, signed the 30th. So that's when that will be the start date there.
Yeah. Okay, this is the certificate of service by post. Yeah.
So that's the 21 days. So when anyone receives, they're looking for a date, that's where the date that comes from. 21 days from that date.
Okay, so that's basically what a single justice procedure is. So basically, the charge is authorized by this dude, Anthony Bamford, issued it on the 29th of August. And this is basically telling how you can plea. You can plea online by entering the reference, or you can plead by post. Once the court has received your plea, what they'll do. Now, everything is just based on their witness statement. Okay, that's their claim. You then giving reasonable excuse or mitigation, and then basically they ask you for form your statement of means, so they can decide in accordance with the Sentencing Acts 2020.
That's that form there, Mark. I'm just bringing it up to the camera. I don't know where the camera.
Yeah, well, you can bring that up just now.
Bring that up afterwards.
Yeah. Actually, just you share. Okay, just bring it up to the camera.
So this is the form that they're referring to here. It will actually come in with the envelope.
Yeah, cool.
It's the financials, basically your financial statement.
Okay, and the reason for that is in accordance with the Sentencing Act, they can't fine you more than you can afford. Okay, so this here then is the witness statement. So I've inspected the record kept by the Secretary of State in regards to this vehicle registration number. The vehicle shows that the defendant was the registered keeper on this particular date. The vehicle did not meet the insurance requirements contrary to section 14A1 of the Road Traffic Act. A fixed penalty notice was sent in accordance with section 14A and C of the Road Traffic Act. You did not pay. No notification was received prior to the date of the offence that the vehicle had been disposed of or stolen, or to date, no notification has been received that the vehicle was insured on that date. And then I made the details of the person making the witness statement.
And notice here it said the vehicle was insured on the date of offence. So they're talking about a singular date here.
Yeah.
On the system, there was no insurance. The fact that you could be taking out day insurance,
correct.
You know, so
yeah. Okay, so that there's basically the whole of that. So it all comes down to section 144A. Okay. But again, just to reinforce the legitimate aim, if you're on private land, why do you need public insurance? You don't. So this here is not an issue of trying to protect the public. This is purely an offense to generate revenue. It has no other purpose, because if you keep it on private land, there's no reason for public insurance. It's insane. So there's no rationality behind it. However, if you scroll down to 144B, okay, it gives you exceptions to a section 144A offense. So this is what where you'll find where most people, and a lot of people have come up with this. I've lost my license for 6 months, so I've not insured it, but it's in my driveway or in my garden, but it's still got MOT and tax. So that situation falls within this exemption. You do not need insurance if you're not using the car on a public road or any other public space. So subsection 1 says a person the registered keeper in whose name the vehicle, which does not meet the insurance requirement, is registered at any particular time, does not commit an offence under section 144A of this act. If any, okay, any means you only need to meet one of the following conditions. Okay, and the condition is this one here. So as the registered keeper, okay, is not at the relevant time the person keeping the vehicle. So wherever the vehicle is stored, that's the person keeping the vehicle.
It was actually
sorry.
It's the fourth
It's
condition.
the fourth condition, not subsection 4. That's what it is. Okay. So
Yeah.
subsection 5. Thanks, Dijon. Okay, so it's the fourth condition. If you're keeping your vehicle on private land without insurance, but it's MOT'd and taxed. Okay, so the registered keeper is at the relevant time the person keeping the vehicle. That condition is met. At the relevant time, the vehicle is not used on a road or other public place. So that there is actually reinforcing the intent of Parliament, intent here of section 143. If you're not using a car on the public roads or in a public space, you don't need public liability insurance. Okay. And then what they've added is another little thing. The registered keeper has by the relevant time complied with any requirements under subsection 7A that is required to have complied with by the relevant or earlier time. So we need to now check the first two conditions of the fourth condition on that. So now we need to go to 7A to see if that is met. So 7A, okay, regulations may make provisions, okay, and A, for the purpose of subsection, we are talking about 5C above, requiring a person whose name, in whose name the vehicle is registered to furnish such particulars and make such declarations as may be prescribed, and to do so at such times and in a manner as prescribed. Okay, so how the hell do we find out if anything's prescribed? In order to find out if anything's prescribed, we need to, and this here shows you that this legislation is up to date. Okay, so there's nothing which is out of date yet. So this is up to date. But to find out if anything affects section 144B, so we're looking for section 144B 7A. Okay, have any regulations been made which affect this one? To find that out, we need to go up to More Resources tab, and the More Resources tab has an option here. List all changes affecting the Road Traffic Act 1988. So I've got that open here. Okay, and there's thousands of things which affect it. So if we just go from the beginning so you can see how this works. Come on. Okay. So this is the first page. So what it says is the Road Traffic Act 88, which is this number, and something that changes a provision is what we're looking for. And then it gives you a brief description of the type of the effect. And then the second side is which other legislation created that change. So basically, it goes through a whole long list, and you can see here on the front page, it only changes the heading of S144.
The other thing to point out here, Mark, on the right-hand side, is that has it been updated on the system, on the main system? If you go to the top of the column, you see the yes column. Yes, yes, yes.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So like you pointed out there, has the website been updated to reflect this change? Okay. And you'll see, you know, some yeses, not yet, not yet. Okay. So you won't know if this whole thing is updated unless you go through it. So we're looking for section 144B. So no,
I think it was around about 22. I think we got to page 22. So
it's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, all the people out there know exactly how to do this, and you know, because
yeah, everybody's aware of it.
everybody's
You taught this at school, aren't you?
Yeah, taught this at school.
Okay, so we're at section 144 now.
Yeah.
Was it on this one?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, but we
It's
want
only section
144B.
40, I think goes the next one. I think. 40 for there
it is.
that's it.
Okay. I know we want 7A. We want to see what's affected section 7A.
7A.
144B, we want to see, are there any regulations which make a provision under subsection 7A? So 144B 7A we're looking for.
We could only find 6A.
B 6A has been amended or inserted, but there's nothing in 7A. Therefore, there's no regulation which requires any of this, and therefore you have met all of the fourth condition, and therefore going back to the their claim, okay, there is no case to answer, okay, because section 144B5, the fourth condition of the Road Traffic Act, is met.
Exactly.
Dijon, if you just take people through the rest of this stuff, because when you look at it, there are so many things, like, you know, people saw there with the changes. Okay, there's so many things which you think may affect it or may not affect it, and you can spend days on this nonsense.
Absolutely. Well, when we had this discussion about 2 weeks ago, because I've been asked by so many people, what do I do? How do I get about it? If you go on the internet and you just start Googling, you're going to get what they want to give you. You've got to go back to the source document. Where is this authority coming from? And you've said it so many times, Mark. You know, the primary act is the primary act 19 Road Traffic Act 1988. You know, that's primary legislation. This is secondary legislation. It cannot supersede the first legislation. You've talked about this time and time again, and
I'm just pulling that up.
You know, and I think if you just reiterate that, because unfortunately, so many people they get this information and they panic, and it is a minefield. You know, I've spent hours and hours, like yourself, going through this, and you just screw yourself up into a knot. You've got to go back and break it apart, and hopefully what we're trying to do is put this out there for people, to help people go through the same logical approach. I know that having read some of the information, it basically it says that, you know, when you go to court, you could be facing a hefty fine, because that's where they whack up the costs even further. A minimum of £1,000, you know, all for having your vehicle parked, or the keeper having the vehicle parked on private property, you know, and they're not on the road. And you haven't broken, they committed no offence whatsoever. So what do most people do? Oh, blinking hell, we'll pay the £100 fine and be done with it. You know?
No, it's just insane. So I'm just want to find specific. Oops. Specific. Right. Okay. So I just want to share my screen here again, and let's just make this bigger again. So that people can see. Share screen. Okay. So basically, shut this away. I'll just start with these regulations. Okay, the Motor Vehicle Insurance Requirement Regulations 2011, and there's loads of these. Okay, what it says is every act of parliament. Now, first thing to note is this is the original version. Okay, it's only available in its original form. So to try and work your way through to find out what is current and all of that, it actually is a nightmare. And the legislation.gov, their team, okay, struggles to keep primary legislation up to date. They don't even try to keep secondary legislation up to date. So the first obvious question is, well, if a whole team of people cannot keep up to date with these pieces of secondary legislation, how on earth can you or I be expected to comply with this and to be familiar with it? Okay, yet they tell you ignorance of the law is no excuse. There is not one person on the planet that can keep up with all of this rubbish. Okay. However, it has always, every document needs to state its authority. What makes this authoritative? So this one here gains its authority. Okay, so what it is the Secretary of State for Transport is claiming authority to make the following regulations in exercise of the powers conferred from the Road Traffic Act. Okay, so if we look at 144B7 and 8, that's the one which affects us in this one. So 144B, particular, we're looking for regulations under section 7. Okay, so this actually has the conferred powers, in our case, under section 7. So if we scroll down and see section 7, I mean, something which affects section 144B, subsection 5, being the fourth condition that we're relying on, we simply look through. Okay, we're not interested in section 4B. Here, 5C. That's of interest to us. So the registered keeper of the vehicle must, by the relevant time and in relation to that vehicle, have delivered the required particulars and made the required declaration in accordance with paragraph blah 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 of the 2002 regulations.
For the 2000 regulation, yeah.
So now we've got to go to the 2002 regulations and see what that says. Whoops. Hi. So what was it?
Section 4.
Yeah. Where were we? Where were we? 5C. Okay. So we're looking for paragraph 5.3 of Schedule 4 to the 2002 regulations to see what that says. So we need to go to Schedule 3.
Section 4.
Oops, was it Schedule 3 or Schedule 4? Sorry, Schedule 4. Schedule 4.
Statutory off-road notification. Yeah.
5. The 5.3. Kate, we're recording. Okay. So 5.3 of Schedule 4. A person to whom this paragraph applies, shall, unless a vehicle license or nil license has been taken out, so as to run from the end of the unlicensed period, deliver the required declaration as per the Secretary of State in relation to GB vehicle, not later than the day following that. So a license means, what were you saying earlier? A license is your tax.
Tax.
Is your vehicle taxed? Yes. So therefore, you've met all of the conditions here. Every single condition is met, and therefore you exempt from an offence, does not commit offence under section 144, because one of the conditions, the fourth condition, you've met. Therefore, you are exempt from any offence under section 144A for insurance.
Maybe it's worth actually just looking at just briefly the other exemptions that they have up there, Mark, because we're looking at a fourth, just because there are different conditions. It's just for people to understand there are various exemptions. So you have the first condition. Maybe you want to quickly go through those.
Okay, so the first condition is your vehicle is owned as described in subsection 1 of section 44 of this act, or paragraph blah, 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 blah of section 2. So we've got to go back to 144. 144, so that gives you exemptions.
Exactly, and that's what we talked about. You're going to come on to this is regarding council. It's very interesting.
Thanks for reminding me about that. So these here have been changed. Okay. So what we'll do is let's look at what they originally said. So we clicked on here, original as enacted as opposed to the latest available. So you see how the heading has changed, the status of the one that I'm viewing. Okay, this is as it was originally enacted. So originally as enacted, guess what you could do? You could self-insure. It wasn't public insurance. Okay, and what you needed to do to self-insure, okay, was lodge deposit with the Accountant General of the Supreme Court the sum of £15,000. So you could self-insure for £15,000 originally. Then, if we go, where's the timeline? If we just go to latest available. Okay, so that was as originally enacted. Okay. 98, where are we? Why is this going the wrong way around? I thought, 92 comes the
This
other way
is going
around.
to the right.
Okay, so it's going the wrong way around. So let's see what happened. But here it goes right, 2000, 2001. Okay, so let's just go to 2000 and see what that said. Okay, that was increased to 500,000. So you could self-insure if you deposited the money with the people. So basically, you could self-insure in the olden days, but they've removed those options. So they're forcing you to go to private monopolies of insurance. Basically, then, if the vehicle is owned by any government body, it does not require insurance. That is because they just pay out everybody on out of the public taxes. So in effect, the public are paying for the insurance, which again they shouldn't do. So that there is all of this A, B, DA, DB, DC, all of those exemptions. The second condition is that owned. Okay, so we've covered both of those.
Yeah, it's used and yeah.
Okay, so the third condition is if you're not the keeper of the vehicle, i.e., you've sold it. Okay, but the documents haven't been updated to reflect that.
And this is an interesting point because one of the persons who approached me, they've actually sold their vehicle to a company such as WeBuyAny.car.com or whatever, and they no longer were the keeper of it. They no longer owned it. Now the alleged buyer said it's your responsibility to notify the DVLA, and they said this via an email. They've been away. Next minute they got this letter saying that the vehicle is no longer insured, but they're not the owner of it. So that is something that people need to be aware of. And in that section there, it said within relevant time, but it doesn't actually specify what a relevant time is, and there we are. Look, below is not required under section 7.
So if we just have a look at 4B here. Okay, here 4B. So this is the secondary regulations. Okay, where a vehicle has been sold to registered keeper or destroyed by the relevant time, okay, and made declarations in accordance with regulations, blah, blah, blah. If the vehicle has been sold to transfer, that's a discretion.
It says by the relevant time in a relationship, but what is relevant time?
Yeah, so for the relevant time, we've got to go to the 2002 regulations, 22(2)(b)(23).
I think hopefully what this is pointing out, it is an absolute minefield of cross-references and sub-legislation and non-updated legislation or whatever. So the average layperson is just left bewildered and thinks, oh hell, I might as well pay up and be done with it. And that's what they want. That's basically what they want. So we're trying to help people to navigate this and get to use this platform if you've got a spare few hours.
Okay, now what's interesting here, okay, it says regulation 22(2)(b)(23)(2) or 24(5) of the 2002 regulation.
Yeah.
So let me just make sure I've got the right regulations. The
No,
road
there is, it's
vehicle
the road
registration
vehicle, yeah.
regulations. What is this one? Road vehicle registration.
That's it.
Is that the right one? Uh,
You have to go up, go up.
registration.
What the definition is.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just scroll through this. This is opening resources, open the whole instrument to make sure. Okay, so we want section 22. 20, what was it? 22 2B. 22 2B. Okay. Right. The registered keeper of the vehicle, if the registration document issued in respect of the vehicle is in the possession, shall deliver to the new keeper that part of the document which is required to be given to them, and shall forthwith deliver the remainder of the document to the Secretary of State. So forthwith is the time, but that is not exactly very expressive. Forthwith can mean many things. Next one is 23.2. So 23.2, name and address, date transferred. So again, that has no time in it. So long as it's, it would come down to the interpretation of what's a reason.
Exactly.
So 24.5 is the next one. 24 subsection 5. Where the vehicle trader transfers the vehicle, I guess, so that wouldn't apply to you. So that's just when the trader sells it. But this is the insanity of the whole thing. It takes, you can't keep up with this stuff.
No. Okay. But the whole idea was to try to shed some light on this and help other people, because people are incurring these £100 fine. They've got a choice: either wade through what we've just gone through and put some arguments, or just pay the £100, and that's what they want. Pay the £100, and now
99 out of 100 people will end up paying the £100. Yeah. Unfortunately.
And I've spoken.
That's what they work on.
And the people I've spoken to, I said, why wasn't it insured? And they said, well, have you seen the cost of insurance now? It's cheaper for me to have these day insurances. And I've done the same myself, until I've actually found a site, and actually our plugger site now that there's an insurance called Journey where you can actually, it's like pay as you go, and it's
which is
very, very good. Yeah, and you
can, I think the main point there, Dijon, you can see how the stupidity has come in. Somebody said, oh, there's people who've got uninsured cars, but they're MOT'd and, you know, registered. And you know, somebody uses these things on the public road. So what they're trying to do is try and cover every possibility.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely insane to think that you can cover every possibility. Yeah. And they've forgotten the substance behind it. The issue is driving on public spaces and public roads to cover the risk of any damage you might do. Yeah. That's why you need public insurance. So why on earth should you be penalized for having your car on the without insurance not being used on the public because of some other dickhead?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's
penalizing. It's just insane.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Mark. I think
hopefully people enjoyed that. Okay.
Yeah. All right.